O wayward generation, were the last words of the Bab to the gazing multitude as the regiment prepared to fire its volley. Had you believed in me, every one of you would have followed the example of this youth, who stood in rank above most of you, and would have willingly sacrificed himself in his path. The day will come when you will have recognized me. That day I shall have ceased to be with you.
Thank you so much. Today we are so excited to have our speaker, Mr. Dariush Lamy. Dariush Lamy is an author and researcher in history and philosophy. Among his notable works is a comprehensive research book titled Abdul-Baha, the Perfect Exemplar, which delves into the life and writings of Abdul-Baha. In addition to this significant publication, he has contributed numerous articles to various Baha'i publications in the Persian language. Having pursued studies in architecture and Islamic studies at U.C.L.A., Dariush brings a unique interdisciplinary perspective to his research and writing. Currently, he is focused on the exploration of the mysteries of prayers, a subject that promises to be a compelling focus for his upcoming book.
Hello, good morning to all of you, or good afternoon to some of you. It's really wonderful to see you all. I hope my voice is okay and you can hear me well. First, I'd like to thank you for this invitation. I'm honored to give this presentation about the martyrdom of the Bab. Since we have understandably limited time, I am trying to focus my presentation in 4 different areas, or mostly I should say 3 different areas, but are related to each other. The first part, I'm going to talk about and give you some general remarks about the Bab. And the second part would be some remarks about the concept of martyrdom and the different types of martyrdom based on the writings of the Baha'i Faith. And the part 3, I should focus on the historical aspect of the martyrdom of the Bab and go into some details, why it happened, how it happened, when it happened, and some details hopefully would be interest to you. And last part, if you have time, I show you some photos related to where the Bab was martyred. Let me start by giving you some general remarks that, as we know, the Bab, meaning the gate, is a gate to recognize the truth. And another important title of the Bab is the primal point, which is, in a way, from one point of view, is a new starting point for everything in life and everything that we know. So by that, the Bab gives a new meaning to new concept, and also to old spiritual concept. But the Bab gives new meaning to all of that. That's one of the reasons that is one of his title is the primal point. I was told to mention also that, first of all, his name, Sayyid Ali Muhammad, he was born in 1819, and he was martyred in 1850 when he was 31 years old. He was born in Shiraz at the house of his uncle because his mother had the first child and it didn't go well, his younger brother. So the mother of the Bab moved to his uncle's home, and the Bab was born there. As a manifestation of God, the life of the Bab can be divided in 2 main periods, 2 main time. One is starting from 1844, at the age of 25, when he declared his mission as the promised one, and it goes for 4 years until the summer of 1848. In 1848 was a turning point in the Babi dispensation, and the turning point because he declared more obviously to everyone that he was the one that everybody was waiting for. It was more obvious than the first 4 years. So that was the time that he stayed for 2 years in Chehriq, and that was the time that Badash took place with 80 other of his followers, with the two main reasons. One is to declare the independence of the Baha'i revelation to any other previous dispensation, and also the other goal of the Badash was to rescue him from the prison that he was staying in Chehriq. And it was in Chehriq, the turning point in 1848, that he revealed many of his major books. We know that the Bab wrote in 6 years time of his manifestation. He wrote more than 50 volumes of books. The major one, as you know, is Kitabe, the book of Bayan Farsi, and by a Persian Bayan and Arabic Bayan, which was written with his own hand while he was in Chehriq. In Chehriq was the time that after 4 years, he named the letters of the living. That was the time that he named them, that they are the letters of the living. It was a clear indication of an independent prophethood that he declared at that time. The second portion of his time as a manifestation of God starts from 1848, meaning from Chehriq all the way to 1850, when he was martyred. I need to mention here a few facts related to the Bab. We know that the Bab appeared in a country with a population of about 10 million people at the time, in an era that there was no internet, there was no radio, it was no Zoom like this, it was no TV or similar means of communication. The reason I say that, because it's interesting that within the 4 years, meaning from 1844 until 1848, more than 100,000 people believed in the Bab and stood by his side, and they were ready to sacrifice their life, which is amazing in a country of 10 million. After 4 years, the Bab, the people, more than 100,000 followed him. Also, I should mention that the Bab was the first prophet who wrote a book with his own hand. This was unprecedented in the history of all religions. No prophet had ever written any book or even a sentence with his own hand. All the other prophets, after many years, had books written for them by others, or their words were collected and compiled into books in the form that we know now. Also, the Bab, in the span of 6 years, as I said, wrote the most books in terms of quantity, more than 50 volumes of books, and it was the most substantial in terms of content, and the most complex one in terms of the quality of what he wrote. Then the Bab also was the youngest prophet among all prophets at the time of his declaration, meaning he was 25 years old when he declared his mission. Other prophets, for example, Prophet Muhammad, when he declared his mission as a prophet, he was at the age of 40. And Moses was about 80 years old, or Jesus Christ was 30 years old, or Zoroaster and Buddha, they were around 30 years old at the time of their declaration. Since today is about the martyrdom of the Bab, I'd like to focus more on that one. Also, the Bab, we know that was the youngest prophet at the time of his martyrdom. As I mentioned, he was 31 years old when he was martyred. Prophet Muhammad, when he died, he was 63 years old at the time of his death. Moses was 120 years old at the time of his death. Jesus Christ was 33 years old Zoroaster was about 77 years old. Buddha was about 80 years old. So we know that the Bab was the youngest in that aspect as well. After Christ, the Bab also had the shortest life as a prophet. We know that he just lived 6 years after his declaration. So he was the shortest as a prophet after the Christ. The Christ lived only 3 years, and after that becomes the Bab, only 6 years he lived. Muhammad lived 22 years as a prophet, his prophethood. Moses, 40 years, Buddha, 40 years. So the Bab in that respect also was one of the youngest one. What is also interesting, I should mention that the Bab was the only prophet who wrote his own biography by his own hand. It was unprecedented that anybody would do that. And we have interesting writing tablet of the Bab explaining his own life year by year. He wrote also his own will, which is again unprecedented before him, with his own hand. The will of the Bab is called Tawqi Wasiyat, that was written towards the end of his stay in Chehriq. Also, I need to mention that the greatest number of martyrs in the shortest period of time were those who were martyred for the Bab. Thousands upon thousands of people were martyred in a very short period of time. His miracle, we never considered anything as a miracle except his writing. And even more important than his writing is the power and the influence of his writing that penetrated the minds and the hearts of the people. Now, let me make some remarks about the concept of martyrdom and the different types of martyrdom. First, because there is a confusion of what is a martyr, and there have been abuse of this word of martyr, and anybody would come up says yes, he or she is a martyr. But this word, I think, has been very much abused, especially in recent decade. So once I looked at the meaning of the martyr, I came up with the definition that this word of martyr originates from Greek language. The martyr, they say in Greek language, it is witness. Martyr is one who voluntarily suffers death. It's not by accident. It's an option. So they pick that option rather than denying their religion by force. So they pick to be martyrs. They decided to that way. And also it is mentioned that one who bears testimony to faith, especially one who willingly suffers death rather than surrender his or her religious faith. Also, it is mentioned that the term may also refer to anyone who sacrifices his life or something of great value for the sake of a principle. Even, friends, has been a lot of studies in the field of lives and sacrifices of martyrs since 1590s upward, and it started the field. It's called martyrology. Basically, martyrology is the history of lives and suffering and death that started from 1590s upward. So it's a lot of discussions about the lives and sufferings and sacrifices of the martyrs. Also, martyrdom is that a person is willing to give up his most precious possession, which is his own life, to prove a truth. This is martyrdom, is not to seek rewards, is not for rewards from God. It is not to go to heaven. It is not a business that you give your life, so in this world or in the next world, probably you go to places that is desirable for everybody. Martyrdom, the pure reason for martyrdom is for love, and for love of God, and for love of truth. So a human life is the most cherished and the most valuable thing a person can offer. It is something that cannot be replaced. In one sentence, I should say that martyrdom is love in action. Again, the summary of all that, the meaning of the martyrdom is love in action. Also, from understanding martyrdom means seeing with your own eyes. Then I tell you later on what I means that seeing the truth. Martyrdom is having a unique perspective on everything, seeing everything in the world as a manifestation of God's attributes. So from a different perspective, martyrdom consists of two stages. The first stage is to recognize and understand the truth. And in that regard, the Guardian has a statement says, we first get attracted to the faith, then we integrate, then we start the process of consecration. In other words, he says there's three steps. One is attraction, integration, and consecration. Attract, when we hear about the faith, Baha'i faith, we become interested in its principle, in its history, in its writings, and its spirit. We are attracted, then we integrate, we become part of the Baha'i community, and we become Baha'is. And after that, the most important part of our life starts, which is the process of consecration, meaning understanding more, getting more involved in what the Baha'i faith is all about. And the second stage from this point of view that I'm talking about martyrdom is to testify to that truth with your own most valuable asset, which is your blood. And this is really the secret of the martyrdom. One might ask that who is a martyr and what is martyrdom? I should say that a martyr is a perfect human being. Martyrdom is in the path of God is not something that can be evaluated with human measurements and ordinary motivations. Martyrdom is not just a regular death, but rather it is a voluntary and intentional acceptance of death. And a true believer does not really shy away from it. In martyrdom, death and life exchange position. The death of martyrs turns into an eternal life, and worldly life becomes like death. As a result, celebration and mourning also exchange its position. Now, let me look at this point from the writings, because we're talking about the martyrdom of the Bab, how the Bab looks at the martyrdom. When I did more research based on the writings of the Bab, see how the Bab looks at the martyrdom, I found something which is really interesting, and that the Bab symbolizes martyrdom as light. He regards the station of martyrdom as the station of light. Friends, it is like the light of a candle. The candle extinguishes itself, but illuminates its surrounding and enlightens others. That's how the Bab looks at the concept and the phenomena of martyrdom. Martyrdom is like a light that illuminates others. It is like a candle that gives light, and in doing so extinguishes itself. And martyr enlightened the world by his blood. In the writings of the Bab, martyrdom is a secret of a truth, and that truth is love. So the love is the secret of love is the martyrdom, and it is the expression of that love that someone would become a martyr. Also, we can ask if there is any effects of martyrs in this world, and there is the writings of Abdul-Baha, that Abdul-Baha talks about the martyrdom, and he explains the question whether the martyrs have any, after they are martyrs, they have any influence in this world. And there is a tablet that explains that there is no translation of that tablet. The original one is in English, but I did a very summary and primitive translation of that shows the gist of it, that I can read that for you. It says the blood of martyrs when shed in the path of the beloved, will flow and run like a river. And this flowing will remain in the hearts forever. This is why martyrs are called the leaders of lovers and the leaders of the devoted. This is the statement of the Guardian. Actually, again, it is my very summary translation. Also, we know that the blood of the martyrs have a lot of effects in the progress of the faith, of the Baha'i faith. The Guardian, Shaykh Effendi, says that he has a letter that he attributes all the victories of the faith to the bloods of the martyrs of Iran. We can, the question also is, at the time of Baha'u'llah, it was questioned that can we ask God to become a martyr or not? And this request was presented to Baha'u'llah. And in some instances, he accepted, such as Badi, who took the tablet of Baha'u'llah to the king of Iran, Nasir-ad-Din Shah. Some were not accepted. But later on, emphatically, Baha'u'llah says no one is allowed to request martyrdom anymore. Rather, everyone has to stand up to serve the faith, even by even saying a word in his path. Everyone has to protect him to be able to serve the faith. Now, another very important topic that I want to touch upon is about the different types of martyrdom based on two tablets, one from Baha'u'llah, the other one from Abdul-Baha. There is a tablet of Baha'u'llah addressed to Zainul Mugharrabin, and the other one is another tablet. I will mention it, that once you look at it together, one after the other, you realize that Baha'u'llah in his writings, or in the writings of the Baha'i faith, there is a mention of three different types, but related, of course, of martyrdom. Type 1 of martyrdom is sacrificing one's life, which is the martyrdom, sacrificing in the path of God, in the path of truth, or in the path of love. I say these three different sentences, these three different words, but basically sacrificing one's life in the path of God is the same as path of truth, or the same as path of love, all of the same. And what is interesting, he says that all have one secret, and that secret is common, and always it will remain secret, except, but there is an exceptions. But what I like to do is just review the main points of this concept of martyrdom based on the writings of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah and Abdul-Baha, and because one is the tablet of Baha'u'llah called Zainul Mugharrabin, the other one tablet is addressed to Mullah Hussein Zanjani. So according to these two tablets, their summary of those is as follows. So in the Baha'i writings, not everyone is worthy of this station. Basically, it is a selective, and God select who can be a martyr in this faith. The second point is that this station is given only to a few selected one. Not everybody is entitled to that station. Another one says we have the option to pray to God through them, meaning there is a big concept in prayer and meditation, that concept is interceding, meaning if we want to pray to God, we want to pray to manifestation of God, the martyrs can intercede for us, and that interceding is talked about in not only in the Baha'i faith, but also in almost all different religions when you do research about the prayer and meditation in different religions. Another concept that these two tablets shows is that no one really can understand the secret of the manifestation, but except one. I tell you what one, well, about that one. And even no one can understand the reason that these individuals are being selected. That's another point, a secret that no one really understands. This is a hidden secret even for the martyrs themselves, up to a point. The martyrs do not know why they have been selected. And to preserve their highest state, the Baha'u'llah in that tablet says, we preserve this concept, keep it as a secret for their own station. And there are a few examples, as I said, some examples that God wants certain individual to know their own station, why they are living. So there were people that were still alive, but they are considered as martyr. So that was nobody exactly knows the secret of it. Only the person who is going to be martyred, just few minutes or few seconds or just before being martyred, they realized that they are going to be a martyr in the path of God. And that point is the one that they see something that no one can understand, no one can see according to these writings. And that's the one they would really rush themselves towards the field of, towards the martyrdom, basically. So, but in the second type or second category of martyrdom, different type, second type of martyrdom is the martyrdom that we cannot be select to be martyred, but Baha'u'llah gives us another option. Is a substitution of the first type as a second option. The substitution that we can be considered as martyrs, and that is one and only one with two conditions. One is to teach the Baha'i faith. Baha'u'llah says, if you cannot be martyred and you're not martyred and you're living now, one thing you can do to be considered a martyr is to teach the faith, to teach the faith. But teaching the faith, as he uses two words, he says, first, you need to teach yourself. Second step is teach others. Again, this is important. This option that we have in this program or in this life is to teach ourselves and then teach others. So in that category, Paul says you can be considered as a martyr. But there is a third type of martyrdom according to these two tablets. It says you investigate, the individual investigate about the Baha'i faith, research about the Baha'i faith, and become a true believer on your own. In the next world, you are considered as a martyr. So that is the first, the most important principles of the Baha'i faith is independent investigation of the truth. So basically here is, in relation to that, is think independently and research and be acquainted and then become a true believer on your own. Sorry. So I did some research about relatives of the martyrs and how they felt before their martyrdom. It was very interesting that many of them told me that they had two wishes before their martyrdom. Recently, the last few weeks, I met with one of the people that I knew closely and talked to his brother. He said, my brother said they wished that the blood is worthy to be sacrificed in his path. So he says, I know they will kill me, but I hope my blood is worthy for this path. And the second wish that they had, it says that they wish they had more life or more lives to give for the faith. It's pity that they only have one life and that they could give for the faith. We know, let me also mention about the martyrdom in different religions. Martyrdom, basically, friends, in all religions is the most valuable and the most worthy phenomenon that exists. No other thing has more merit than martyrdom. In Christianity, martyrs are highly regarded. It is often mentioned in the New Testament. The first Christian martyr, they were Saint Stephen and Saint James. But out of apostles, the most important martyrs were, of course, Peter and Paul. And we know that in the first 2 centuries, martyrdom was not really frequent in Christianity. But in Islam, this concept of martyrdom is borrowed from a Judeo-Christian concept. And the concept of discussion of martyrdom is not really mentioned that much in Quran, but in hadith or in traditions in Islam has been regarded very, very hard, very, very highly. Now, let me get into the history of the martyrdom, focus on the history of the martyrdom of the Bab. I don't know how much time I have, but this is very extensive with a lot of details. I try to summarize it. I'll be happy to cover anything that you want to ask me later on. We know that the plan, because of the progress of the Baha'i faith in Iran, it was so much that many people, not only the mullahs, the spiritual leaders of Iran, but the governments was very much concerned, and they were planning to do anything possible to diminish that growth of the thought of the Bab. Did everything from the beginning, but at the last they realize that one of the things they can do is to put away the Bab in a city that is very much remote and that nobody can access him. Then they decided between Muhammad Shah Qajar, but mostly his prime minister was Haji Mirza Aghasi. He was the one who decided to bring the Bab first with the intention to meet the king of Iran, Muhammad Shah at the time, but then he changed his mind apparently, and he said the best thing for the country is to send the Bab to a city that is the remotest city in Iran, which was Maku. Maku, friends, is the last city before the Russian territory. The Maku basically is a city that is just on the border and was built just is a military base. It was built so to make sure if there is any attack from other countries, the military base is there to protect the attackers. And it's a city that is, they are not Shi'i cities, they're all Sunni. You know, there are Shi'is and Sunni. That city is predominantly the people who live there is Sunni. And they knew the Bab was a Shi'i Muslim. He was a Sayyid, the descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. And no one would really care if somebody who is a Shi'i descent to come to the city. And is a remote city, is not an exciting city, nothing is happening. So they decided to send the Bab to Maku. When I was very young, as a youth living in Iran, I visited Maku, and I have good memories. Later on, I don't have time to go through those with you, but basically it is not such an exciting city to go. So they send the Bab over there with the hope that everything would come down and nobody would go after him and the whole thing would finish, the whole Babi movement would be finished. And it was not the case. And everybody fell in love. The summary is that everybody fell in love with the Bab, with his personality, and it was so he became very popular after 9 months of living in Maku, and that the government decided to move him from there, put it in a village which has really no access and is very remote and even no road to that. And if you want to go to the other village you have to go through with horses or donkeys over there. That was Chehriq. So they sent the Bab to Chehriq. He stayed in Chehriq for 2 years. Then they realized that while living in Chehriq, it was even more popular. Everybody was coming and going, and that was the time that the conference of Badasht started. It was the time that the Bab wrote many of his important tablets in Chehriq. He wrote Persian and Bayan and Arabic Bayan, and it was about 110 miles from Tabriz. It was far away, but they realized that it didn't work either. So they tried to come up with a solution what to do. Then Muhammad Shah, the king of Iran, passed away. His son Nasruddin Shah becomes the king, and then the prime minister of the new king is Amir Kabir, which is very well known and famous in Iran for all he did during those few years that he was in power. So Amir Kabir realized that the only thing to do is just to kill the Bab, execute the Bab. So hopefully the whole commotion in Iran, the whole new believers in Iran, the whole mentality, everything would vanish and finish with the whole commotion that he saw coming up, that see what is happening there. So basically, I'm trying to summarize it. The Bab, the Amir Kabir then sends some soldiers and to Chehriq, take the Bab, take it to Tabriz, to a governor of Tabriz, which is, I show you some pictures later on if you have time. He takes it, he orders the Bab with some soldiers to go to the governor's home, and after a few days he sends another order to the governor that I want you to execute the Bab. And the governor did not obey the prime minister, and he was very upset that it is impossible that I touch him. He is a very respected man. He is my guest at my home. He is not only that, on top of that, which was very important, he was a Sayyid, meaning from the lineage of the Prophet Muhammad, and it is forbidden to kill anybody who is a Sayyid. So at that time was that even before that, the Bab wrote letters to Baha'u'llah, put everything in a box and send it through one of his secretaries to Bab. So we know that in even what is important to note, again, there's a lot of details, but I should mention that in late 1849, in one of his last surviving letters, the Bab to ulama of Tabriz, he urged them to basically remove the veil of ignorance and recognize his true stations. He used to give a lot of public talks in Chehriq, and a lot of people were becoming very much interested in what he was saying, and then it become his followers. He was sent to Salmas, and all the Babis tried to rescue him. But anyway, he goes to this governor's home, stays there, and since he didn't obey the Amir Kabir, the prime minister of Iran, to execute the Bab, so the prime minister Amir Kabir saw the only way to do that is to orchestrate a trial meeting for the Bab, and invited several of the greatest mullahs basically to that trial meeting. It is a very famous trial meeting later on in Iran. At this time, a few years ago, this trial was published in a separate book, and I personally bought a few copies of that, and I have it in my library. I read it, and I compare it to the original meetings reports that what was happening. the reason that Amir Kabir tried to organize that trial meeting was to see how he can lower the station of the Bab, how he can diminish his popularity by asking mullahs to ask the Bab important questions that he was hoping the Bab wouldn't answer. The mullahs, again, it's a 100-page, I tell you in 30 seconds. The mullahs tried to diminish his positions, but they were not successful, and they asked him to return back to Islam. He said, there is no chance that he is the Qa'im, he is the promised one, he is the new manifestation of God. They were very upset. They took him for bastinado, which was very common torture at the time. And they took him. I show you some pictures of the place that they did the bastinado to the Bab. And basically from the time of this trial to the martyrdom of the Bab friends, it took 3 weeks. So from that point turned more and more aggressive, everything in these 3 weeks. The Bab was taken to a building, to a structure. I show you the picture, which is called Arge Ali Shah. Arge Ali Shah originally was a mosque. It was built about 1,200 years ago, but it was just abandoned place, and they had a room still there. The Bab was taken there. And at the time when they were doing bastinado to Bab, and one time it hurt his face. The Bab's face was hurt. It was blood all over, and they brought Dr. McCormick to treat him, to take care of the Bab. Dr. McCormick, of course, originally from Ireland, but his family and himself were living in Iran at the time. He was born in Ireland, but before that, and the whole life, Dr. McCormick used to live in Iran, specifically sometimes in Tehran, but many times in Tabriz. He was the personal physician of the king of Iran and of the prime minister of Iran, basically. And Dr. McCormick was sent to the Bab to take care of his wound, basically. And he started liking more and more, and he stayed with the Bab for several days. And there is a website also that you can read more about Dr. McCormick and his experiences. His, I think, great-granddaughter of Dr. McCormick is still living in Ireland. They have a website that you can read more about it. So that was the time that Amir Kabir, let me go back to the martyrdom. That was the time that Amir Kabir was really worrying how to execute the Bab, and they couldn't get the fatwa. The main obstacle of that, friends, again and again, was because the Bab was a Sayyid, meaning from descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. And in the Islamic culture, it is not basically allowed to just order the execution of a Sayyid. So they didn't know what to do. That's at that point, Amir Kabir, or the prime minister, sends his brother to Tabriz, from Tehran to Tabriz to execute the Bab. His brother was a secretary of defense of Iran at a time. So he said, go to Tabriz and try to get the fatwa from the certain ulamas and just execute Sayyid Ali Muhammad, the Bab, and come back. As soon as this order was given to the brother of Amir Kabir, Baha'u'llah at the time was living in Tehran, and he heard this news that what Amir Kabir decided to do. Amir Kabir selected Suleiman Khan, the famous Suleiman Khan that had candles all over his body when he was martyred. He selects Suleiman Khan to go from Tehran to Tabriz with a very fast horse. We know that it takes basically, friends, 3 days approximately by horse going from Tehran to Tabriz. the reason Baha'u'llah decided to ask Suleiman Khan go to Tabriz, because Suleiman Khan his father was a mayor of Tabriz at the time. His father was very influential authority in Tabriz, and they were, elite family, and they were very rich family, also very influential in Tabriz. Baha'u'llah said, ask Suleiman Khan to go there, and hopefully Suleiman Khan can influence and do something, anything, that this execution does not happen. But Suleiman Khan, since it takes 3 days by horse to arrive, just got to Tabriz 1 day late. So when he got to Tabriz, the Bab was already martyred. It was the whole scenario was done. So we know that the Bab also was taken from, I should say, from the day the day before of the execution, that the Bab was living there in that Arge Ali Shah, that the easiest way for the brother of Nasruddin Shah to execute the Bab is to take him to a military base, not only because he was the Secretary of Defense, that he had more power for everything else is going on in all the military bases, but more important than that, because he want to show his power and the power of the government, that they want to make sure everybody is scared of the government, of the Shah, of the Amir Kabir, of the whole system, that everybody would obey them. We know that, in summary, that the Bab came to Tabriz 3 times. The first time that the Bab came to Tabriz, he met his companion for the martyrdom, meaning Anis. Anis is a word, means the intimate companion. Intimate companion is exact meaning of Anis. His first name, I should say maybe a few words about Anis, because he was the companion of the Bab in this martyrdom, was Mirza Muhammad Ali Zanuzi, that he was martyred with him. He was also a mullah. He was the youngest of the 2. He had an older brother and an older sister. He was married very young. He had 2 kids. And then the kids were very young when they also died. And he saw the Bab in his dream, and he became a believer, ardent believer. And when basically at that time was that Nasruddin Shah was trying to push more and more to execute the Bab. The reason, because the month of Ramadan was approaching, and in Islam, in the month of Ramadan, basically, theoretically at least, you cannot kill others. And they were trying to get this job done and finish the execution before the month of Ramadan. So what was happening in the day of the martyrdom, in the morning of the day of the martyrdom, we know the day before they brought the Bab to this military base, the day before. And then in the morning, what happening on July 9, which is a few days coming up, which is the martyrdom of the Bab, a few things happened. One is that the chief attendant came to take the Bab and the 4 companions, because at the time that they were bringing the Bab for the execution, he had 4 companions. One was Anis, the other one was his personal secretary, Sayyid Hussein al-Khatib. He had a total of 3 secretaries, and there are 2 others of his followers. And they came to take him to get the fatwa. Still, they were waiting for this fatwa, or fatwa is a decree to execute somebody, that usually the biggest ulama of Islam would issue the fatwa. And the biggest ulama or biggest mullah in Tabriz at the time that was really pushing this forward was Mullah Muhammad Mamagani. Mullah Muhammad Mamagani in this whole scenario was very prominent. And even we know that when Nasruddin Shah, the king of Iran, at a later time, when he traveled to Europe. He traveled to Europe 3 times. In one of the ways that they used to go to Europe, from Tehran, they come to Tabriz. From Tabriz, they go to Europe. In one of the times, Nasruddin Shah asked Mullah Muhammad Mamaqani, the great Mullah of Tabriz, that he asked that since you were at this trial meeting of the Bab, would you please write down a story? I mean, not a story, the whole scenario, what was happening on the whole story in a words of that meeting, what happened, the conversations, and everything else. And he did. After the return of Nasruddin Shah, Mullah Muhammad Mamaqani gave the whole episode of what was happening, the discussions that they had with the Bab in that trial meeting. This episode again was taken and brought to Tehran. It was published, and later on it was republished by the recent in recent years, with some major changes that I realized from the old publication to the new publication, and compared them. There were some changes of the report of what was happening in that time and the trial time of the Bab. So basically, on that day, they tried to go and they took the Bab separately, took Anis and everybody else separately to get the decree. But the Bab told the other ones that if you kill, again, I try to summarize it, sorry. The Bab in a meeting the night before asked them, I want one of you to kill me, to execute me rather than the government. And the 4 sitting around the Bab, they dare to say anything, and the only person who stood up was Anis. He said, I am willing to do anything that you tell me, my master. If you want me to execute you, I obey it completely. Just you tell me how to do that, and I do it. That was the time that the Bab selected him. And that was exactly the time that the Bab told him that you are my Anis, you are my close companion, and I want you, I select you to be martyred along my side. So the other 3s, the Bab said, you need to go out and tell them that, okay, you're not following me anymore, go out. And the Bab gives them missions, what to do, what not to do, go to give these writings in a box, go to Tehran, give it to Baha'u'llah, and many tasks that they gave, the Bab give them what to do. Again, in a summary, they take them separately to get the fatwa, and finally they get the fatwa, but the government want to show their power to the people, so they take the Bab around the town. But what they did to make sure there is no commotion, again, for a country like Iran, being a Sayyid was and still is very important, because he's a descendant of of Muhammad, and they cannot execute people like that who are Sayyid. At least it was like that at that time. So what the government tried to do, the brother of Amir Kabir tried to do, he says, okay, take the turban, or take anything that shows that he's a Sayyid. One of them was the turban, one of them was the sash of the Bab, and everything else. Take it and then go and take him around to show the power that we have. That was the time also after they returned, and his wives came with the 2 keys to see what they can do to stop it. They couldn't, and then 10,000 people all around surrounded. There were mostly people who lived in Tabriz. Also, there were others, foreigners from France, from England, from Russia. They had diplomats basically living, their consulates living in Tabriz. They came, they watched, they wrote reports. And it's interesting that even their reports, and even the reports that the enemies of the faith, all of them say the same thing. They says there were 3 rows of soldiers. Each row they had 250 guns in their hand, and then they shot, and total of 750 bullets were shot to the Bab. And all the sources come up to the conclusion. They say that when the smoke and dust cleared away after the volley, the Bab was not to be seen. Everybody said that, and everybody was very shocked. The second group they came, the first one was they were Muslims. They got scared that how such a thing can happen, and nobody says we are not going to touch this, do this again. I think there is something that we don't understand why he was not killed. So the second option the government had or the military had was to bring another group. The head of the group was a colonel called Colonel Sam Khan, who was Armenian guy who was living in Iran for many, many years and who was in the military, and he came to Bob and asked for his forgiveness. And then the Bob said, you do your job, and God will forgive you for that. And we know that, again, there are a lot more details. I think my time is past, but we know that it took Suleiman Khan, who was one of the witnesses, came after the martyrdom, saw the body of the Bab, and Suleiman Khan took him to different places. And then he was brought to Tehran several years in Tehran. From Tabriz, it took 50 years, friends, to bring the Bab's body to Haifa. And once it got to Haifa after these 50 years, it stays in the room, in the house of Abdul-Baha. Next room of Abdul-Baha was his sister, and the body of the Bab stayed in that room for 9 years, and until the final resting place that was on March 21st, on the day of Nowruz of 1909, that he was buried. Now, friends, more than 7 million Baha'is will meet in more than 116 localities in about more than 200 countries in the world to commemorate the martyrdom of the Bab that took place 174 years ago. So basically, I tried to summarize it. This was a very summary of about the concept of martyrdom and about some history of background of the martyrdom of the Bab. I know my time is past, but if you have extra time, a few minutes, I can share with you some pictures, or if not, so we can just move on if there's any questions or answers.
Yeah, you can go ahead and share your pictures, and then we can move on to the Q&A.
Sure, thank you very much. Okay. So friends, as I mentioned, these are some photos that recently I received from Iran. So this basically is a place I talked to you that they took the Bab to Arge Ali Shah, which is here. This is after the famous trial that they had for the Bab. And this is the Arge Ali Shah. This is almost center of Tabriz. And here is the Arke Ali Shah. It's very famous, and it was built as a not as a church, sorry, as a mosque about 1,200 years ago at the time of Ali Shah, approximately at that time. And this is the room that the Bab was taken. I was a youth personally. I visited this place, and I have good memories of it. And here is another angle of the same building. It was from the mosque. It was changed to different things like factories to build armaments and bullets and all of that. And then here is another angle of that. This is a place that is very well known in Tabriz. Is called Ark. So the Bab was taken here for about 3 weeks used to live here in the top corner here. I went all the way, actually, all the way to this room. And this is the place that Dr. McCormick, the only Westerner living in Tabriz at the time, visited the Bab several times, and I stayed with him. And he wanted to stay with him because of the wound that the Bab had in his face. So it was this place that happened. So this is another angle of the Argali Shah. Again, this is right before the execution or the martyrdom of the Bab that he stayed here. This is present time. It's not just recent. When you go there now, you can see that. You can see even the date here. This is very recent picture. Then after that, I show you, this is the old picture at the time of the Bab. Then here, basically, friends, is the place that the used to be a military base that they took the Bab and Anis for the execution. Again, there are details about it. I don't want to give you headache to go to more and more details. This is the place the place of execution of the Bab. Here is the present time. It's a government building right now. It has been built there. When I visited Tabriz, when I was youth, it was, I saw actually exactly the place. It was not touched at that time. And then after that picture, here is the house of Anis, the father of Anis. He used to live here. You know, they're all close by here that you could see the location, which is this one. And then here is another angle of the house. And after, friends, after the martyrdom of the Bab, they took the two bodies, which was mixed together, of the Bab and Anis, and they left it in a place overnight. And now this is basically the place they took him here, which is right now. This is the place. This one was out of the boundaries of the city of Tabriz at that time. And the famous trial of the Bab, the fake trial that they tried to do at the time, took place in this place, but later on they built it. So it is changed at this time. So this was, again, as you can see, was a close by place that it was built later on. This is the after the next day. They came, some Babis, and heading with Suleiman Khan, they took the body of the Bab from this place and they took it to one of the Baha'is, Mirza Hussein Milani, which was one of the Baha'is, or one of the Babis, I should say, at a time. They took him there. So this is later on is built. This is where the body of the Bab stayed for some time. That it was moved to Tehran. This is the mosque that Bab had a chance to go to the mosque for a time to pray over there. This is the place that they took him through here. The Bab walked through here to visit the place of his execution. Which you can see here. This is the path the Bab took to go, because they took the Bab throughout the city without turban, without sash, without anything. just to show to the people that anybody, the intention of the government was that if you don't follow us, if you don't obey us, if you don't listen to whatever we say, this is what you're going to end up with. We're going to take you through the city and we are going to execute you. That's the reason. This is the path that the Bab took for his execution. So when you are there physically visiting, believe me, is an experience that you never forget. This is the place that after the famous trial, they took the Bab and they did the bastinado here. And then from here, they took it to Arg Ali Shah, basically. This was a common torture at a time. So, then it comes again back to his execution place. So this was the place for the bastinado, that what happened. So I think, let me end here. I hope I could give you a general view of the concept of the martyrdom and the martyrdom of the Bab. Again, there are a lot more details, but I think I hope I could give you a sense of this event that happened. I'll be happy if there is any questions. I hope it was useful at least.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lamy. That was a very insightful talk into the martyrdom of the Bab, and I'm sure we all gained a lot of knowledge on types of martyrdom. That was very nice. Thank you. So now we can move on to the Q&A portion. So if anybody has any questions, please write them in the chat and I'll read them aloud in the order received. So we already have a couple questions. I'll start off with the first one. Can you please tell us how we can describe the miracle that happened at the first try of execution to the Seekers and those that take Ruhi Book 4?
Would you say that again?
Yes. Could you please tell us how we can describe the miracle that happened at the first try of execution to the Seekers and those that take Ruhi Book 4?
Look, my friends, number one, Baha'u'llah, Abdul-Baha, the Bab, never mentioned the execution, if you're referring to that, of 750 bullets, and it was not effective. They don't look at it, they don't mention it as a miracle. You see, when we look at, first, number one, I should say this, that no Baha'i or non-Baha'i sources mentioned that this happened. Nobody would negate that these 750 bullets. And everybody was puzzled. Everybody was confused that how come the Bab was not killed with 750 bullets. If that was a puzzle. And it still is a puzzle, okay? And there are a lot of puzzles in the world. Not only there is for these puzzles, no one, I can assure you, can give you a legitimate answer. Not only I cannot give you a legitimate answer that says this was a miracle, and no one else. You can explain. You can say, yes, this is a will of God. This is when they try to kill a manifestation of God. This is what happened. You can explain a lot of things. But the bottom line, friends, this was a puzzle and there is no answer for that, how it happened. But more important than that is that we don't consider it, we don't say that that event was a miracle, because the Bab made sure and the Baha'u'llah made sure that we don't mention these as a miracle. What is miracle is the writings that they wrote. That is the miracle. And even there is one more important miracle than the writings. It's more important than the writing. That's the effects of the writings that we have on the hearts and on the minds of the people. That effect is the mark, is the miracle. That's the effect that when people read it, understand it, they are willingly to give their blood, their life, which is the most precious asset that everyone has, to show and to prove the truth of this cause. That influence is the miracle. Beautiful writings, you find it maybe in philosophers. Beautiful writings, you can find it with poetries from East or from the West. Beautiful. You find it all over. What a beautiful, beautiful statement. How deep it is. This philosopher write deep statements, very deep. I read them, I understand them. They're very deep, very interesting, very insightful. But friends, none had and has the influence that the writings of the faith has in their minds and in their bloods. None. You don't find anyone says, I love Nietzsche, I read Nietzsche, but they go and give their life and their blood for Nietzsche, or for Immanuel Kant, or for Saadi, or for Rumi. They have conferences of Rumis every year. Beautiful words, but the influence is the miracle. That is what we should talk about. When Baha'u'llah asked Nabil to write the Nabil's narrative, Baha'u'llah had one condition for Nabil. I said, Nabil, when you write all of these episodes, from these 750 bullets to everything, there are many events like that, make sure of one thing. Do not exaggerate. Do not say these are miracles. Just write what you know that what happened. Leave it at that. Don't come up with this is miracle, because there are many, many things in the history of the faith you can say. You can come up with a list of it, a book maybe just mentioning of different events. For all of us, it can be considered a miracle, but we don't consider those miracles, and they shouldn't be even mentioned of these are miracles. Another point about the 750 again is it's not understandable, because not everything we can understand in this world and in this life. We cannot understand everything. Why? Because there are three different methods of understanding a phenomena or a history or anything in this life. There is different methods. One method is through science. It's a scientific approach to understand something. No, there's scientific studies to understand. But there are others, another thing is a philosophical understanding of something. Science has nothing to do with philosophy. For instance, what is, for instance, freedom? Freedom is a concept that is being discussed from a philosophical point of view. Many philosophers talk about the concept of freedom, but no scientist talks about freedom, because it's a different field. If we bring scientists to explain philosophical views, they have problems. And if we bring philosophers to talk about science, they have problems. That's where we fall into problems that, you see, I don't understand. The same thing, the third point, the third method of understanding things is in a spiritual realm, spiritual manners, spiritual methods. Prayer is to understand prayer, even though has been done scientific studies of that, but the majority of it, I've done a lot of research on that, the majority of that is belief, is purely believing in something. You just believe. So religion, spirituality is the method that we don't mix it with scientific view. Spirituality, we don't mix it with philosophical view. There are three different methods of understanding three different phenomena. 750 bullets is not science. The science doesn't accept that. Doesn't make sense. We have to be realistic. The scientifically, because it has nothing to do with science. Something happened. We look at it from a spiritual point of view. We just amazed. We don't understand. Believe me, many things we don't understand. Do we understand really, really, really who is God? We don't understand really who is really the essence of God. We just know. The same way we cannot prove the essence of God, the same way we cannot disapprove the existence of the God, because it's a matter of belief, it's not matter of science. The same with the 750 bullets. I don't consider them, and I don't talk to them. I don't know for Ruhi, whatever you talk about. Talk if you want to talk about the miracles, talk about the influence of the writings that we have. When we read it, it makes us go pioneering. If we read it, makes us give us our lives, our belongings, and our love, and our blood for the faith. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. So another question says, could you please speak to the common example where Muslims would strap explosives to one's belt and declare oneself as a martyr? This is perhaps moreover violent and destructive. Please speak to this.
Thank you very much. The reason, actually, friends, I mentioned at the beginning, and I try to give you a very summary one, is that there is in this life, in these last decades or century, it's many concepts, many words, many meanings have been abused. They use these, one of those things have been abused is this concept and the phenomenon of martyrdom and a martyr. This concept have been using as a promotional asset, as a advertising asset, or as a business point of view. That's at the beginning, as I mentioned, one of the reasons that I went through to give the meaning of martyrdom. What is martyrdom? Who is martyr? I use the sources that are established sources from the Greek words, from the encyclopedias that are well established and accepted by all over, from Oxford, from different universities, that they accepted the definitions. That's the reason those that I based my explanation based on the true meaning of the martyrdom. My presentation was based on that. What we see in the world, they go and kill themselves. In my point of view, they are not martyrs at all. This is a business technique that is being used to promote some special goals or political goals that they have in their mind. Completely different of what the true martyrdom is. So that's the gist of what I was.
Thank you. Next question is, did any of Dr. McCormick's family members become members of the Baha'i community?
Yes, that's a very good question. And that was my question also when many years ago I started going into more details of who are McCormick, and I did a lot of research and online and everything else. The answer, to my understanding, up to this point, no. But they are very familiar with the great-grandfather and the grandfather that they had. They're familiar. They know it, that who he was. Because not only Dr. McCormick, as I said, his father of Dr. McCormick also was a medical doctor. They invited the medical doctor to go to Iran to be the medical doctor of the king of Iran, from Muhammad Shah Qajar. They were doctors. They had foreign doctors over there. So they stayed there. Dr. McCormick, the first name was William. William was born actually in Tabriz. I'm sorry, no. The mother was pregnant. They want to make sure the son is born back in their country in Ireland. They traveled back. The son, the William, was born there, and after the birth, again they came back because they want to have the passport of Ireland passport. So they came back, and from the childhood, William McCormick lived in Tabriz. His Persian was fluent. You know, Tabriz, they speak also their own language. I don't know if he knew Turkish or not, but the Persian, and he studied medicine. He studied all the high school. When he finished high school, he went back to England. He went to medical school in England. And then after finishing medical school, he came back to Iran. Family was living in Iran. So he lived there. And then the descendant of the descendants, 2, 3, 4 generations after that, now they live in Ireland. And through my research, I found a website that I think the great-granddaughter created that website and had a picture of William McCormick, an explanation of his story and of his biography. And they said what happened, his meeting with the Bab, it says, our great-grandfather was the only Westerner who met the Bab, Sayyid Ali Muhammad, the Bab, for several days. And even they said, it's interesting, in the memoir of the family, they said he was very much in love with the Bab, even though he didn't become Babis, but he was so much attracted to the person of the Bab. The great-granddaughter writes that they said, what happened, you see, if you're a doctor, if you have a wound, they go, they band-aid, they take care of it, maybe whatever, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, then you go back to what you're doing. But the Dr. McCormick reported to the authorities, says, no, Sayyid Ali Muhammad, the Bab, has needs a special attention for his wound. And I need to stay with him all the time, make sure his well-being. This is the family rights in his memoir. And that's the reason he was sitting with the Bab for a few days, they say 3 days, and talking to the Bab very frequently. And he fell in love with the Bab, with his ideas, with his personalities, with the way he talked, the ideas he had. And he says, he told our great-grandfather that, yes, my faith is going to go to your original country too, in Europe and in Ireland. Your descendant will become my followers. They write it, not the Babis or Baha'is. They write it. And they published it in a website. I have it somewhere in my computer, this website. They're explaining this is what it is. Then he goes back, and he knew he was good, but it was just taking time to be with the Bab at a time. So they explain this, the kids, but they leave it at that. They don't say any detail. I don't want to assume anything. Yes, they become a Baha'is or not. I don't know, because they don't say it. I don't want to assume yes or no. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't know. But according to their own website they created, this is what all explanation, and they're very interesting, that several very interesting pictures, colorful pictures that they put of William McCormick. Okay, friends, sorry, taking too long. I have a YouTube channel. You can check it out, and you can either email me or send any messages that you have through email. I'll be more than happy if there is anything I can help out.
Yes.
If not,
Well,
Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
if there's no more questions, then we can close off for today. So thank you so much again. And I would like to introduce our speaker next week, which will be Dr. Hushman Badi, and his topic is there a Baha'i economic system? So again, these talks occur every Saturday at noon Eastern time, so please invite your friends and family. And if you'd like to be on our weekly mailing list for these events, please fill out the contact form that we put in the chat and also in the description box of our YouTube videos. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you all. Good. Take care.